Yeah, let's go ahead and get started because our time is limited. And first of all, I want to thank you all for joining the conference, but especially thank Darren for joining us today and to help us understand, what can we do to strengthen our relationships or even build our relationships with state legislators. And rather than me take the time to introduce Darren, I'm going to let Darren introduce himself. But also, I want Darren to sort of expound on a story that he told me. And the story is the other day when I was talking to him, he says, well, one thing that I can tell you about is how to get a state legislator to respond to you within 5 minutes. And that I was sort of mesmerized and said, okay, I want to know the answer to that. So I'm going to turn this over to Darren. And Darren, let you expound for a while. I want to make sure we have some time for questions. But Darren, thanks for joining us.
Okay. Thank you, Tony. And I appreciate the invite. It's good to see everyone there. So I'm Darren Jernigan. I'm in the State House of Representatives, and I represent District 60, which is in eastern Davidson County, the Donaldson Hermitage, Old Hickory area. I'm very blessed to have Tony Garr as a constituent. But when he asked me to speak on this and how to build relationships, and there were a couple of thoughts and ideas and feelings that I had on this. And what Tony's referring to is that I've been asked before, how do I get to know my legislator? He doesn't call me back. I only see him during election years or that person, I shouldn't say he, but what can I do? And so I developed a little talk that I said, okay, look, if you do these 5 things, I guarantee you, actually you probably do 2 or 3 of them, I guarantee you that your representative will call you back. And so the first thing is very simple. Register to vote. And I know that sounds like, oh, I'm registered to vote. That's easy to do. But you would be surprised at the voter apathy that we have in this country. I represent 68,000 people. 30,000 are registered to vote. Half of them will show up to the polls. Right now, if you're in a primary or gerrymandered district where the primary is the actual election, half of those will be in that party. Now you're down to 7,500. And then you're looking at, you only need 50% plus 1 of them to win. And now you're down to 3,500 people who speak for 68,000. And if you don't think that a representative or a senator doesn't know who those 3,500 people are, especially with data mining and that kind of stuff, we do. We know who votes and who doesn't. And so the register to vote. And I'm not, and I'll get home and I'll have 4 or 5 messages. I'll look at them and I'll look to see if they're registered to vote or not. All right. And doesn't, sometimes I don't want to see who I'm talking to. And if you're not registered to vote, you're probably the 5th person. I'm gonna call you back. I'm gonna do my job, but I'm gonna call the person back that's first on line who's registered to vote. And I know that they're interested and that they're participating in society, and we're gonna get something done. Now, you register to vote too. Now, this one sometimes people say, oh, it's just another politician looking for money. But I said, look, contribute to a campaign. Find someone that you want. And I'm not talking about $1,000. I'm not talking about $500. I'm talking about $10, $15. Show up to a fundraiser, give the $10, get to know those people. You're on the list as a financial contributor. And believe me, public servants, politicians, their egos are stroked whenever they get $10 from someone. I would rather get $10 from someone who doesn't really have it to give than get $1,000 from somebody, because I know one thing, that she's going to go out and vote. That $10, I know she's going to go out and vote for me. She's going to. 3, volunteer on a campaign. it, whoever your candidate is, it could be holding a sign, it could be having a housewarming party, it could be making phone calls for an hour. Volunteer, get involved into that campaign of whoever your person is. And then at that point, and I'll give you a perfect example. Tony and Madeline held a little house party for me, probably, Tony, was that 7 years ago, 7 or 8 years ago? And I'm on a Zoom call with him now. So so now you're registered to vote. You've given your $10. You've worked on the campaign. This one's a little more harder to do. Number 4 is that about getting involved in your community. There's something that you love to do. Is it going to be, are you going to be your nonprofit or your volunteer organization? Are you going to become leadership up in that organization and then advocate for it? Or are you going to join the local chamber of commerce or a social club or your HOA? It could be something as simple as, and maybe you want to get into leadership into that organization. And at that point, and you have access to emails, or you do a blog, or whatever you want to do. Because when you get to a point to where a candidate is going around and saying, I'm running for office, and they're going to say, I'm picking on Tony, isn't it? Have you talked to Tony? Have you talked to Tony? You go, pretty soon, that person's going to go on and talk to Tony. Because Tony's not bringing 1 vote to the table. He's bringing 50 votes to the table. That's an endorsement, and that's influence.
Right.
Now you're registered to vote. You're given $10. You have held a sign up at the precinct. You're influential in your community. If that person does not call you back after that, because believe me, if you're not doing this for that candidate, you're doing it for the opponent. If it doesn't call you back that, then you march down to your election commission. You pick up papers to run against that person. Now you have no intention of running, but you pick it up, and they will be calling you at that point because you registered to vote. You give financially to a campaign. You work other than someone's love. Their labor and time is precious, and you're influential in the community. And now you're thinking about their seat. Trust me, I will step out of a committee meeting to call that person back. So, okay. So, Tony, do you want me to keep going? Or do you have another question?
I mean, there was one other thing that in our conversations that you have mentioned in the past that I thought was just so, so important. It's something that I think many of us skip over. I'm in your legislative district, and you said, like you were sending an email to a state legislator, you had suggested making sure you put the district in the subject line. I live in District 60, or live in that also will garner the legislator's attention, and likely to get them to call you back or get them to respond. And so I want to throw that out, but also just wanted to ask another question, sort of broadly. How do you deal with these email systems that you get an email and you get 25 of the same email from about the same subject?
Okay, so this is kind of along the lines. Once your representative does call you back, what do you say to them? How do you effectively communicate with them? But in regard to the emails, correct. You can give me 100 block emails with the same message that's generated by an organization. And when I see it pop up, I'm deleting it. I've read the first one. I've read the second one. At that point, it's just a number that's coming through. Tony's correct. I did say that if you want my attention, you type in District 6. That's just where I'm at. You type in wherever you're at, your representative, type in their district in the subject line. They're going to open it immediately. Their assistant is going to open it immediately. But and it's okay. Just whenever they say, click here and this is your legislator and send the email. Take the time to put the district in there and then carefully craft your message. And you can take the language that's even in the block email that's being generated and make it your own, because there's good bullet points in there. But if you make it your own, you bring it home, because the constituent is a window back to the district, right? And so, which also leads me, I don't know if Tony, you want to get into how.
Well, there's one other question I'd like you to address.
Okay.
And then after that, I'd like to open it up to people who have joined this particular breakout session. The question is along the line of expertise and being a trusted entity. Because you're not an expert in education. You're not an expert in the justice system or in transportation, and no legislator is expert in all those issues. But you have to rely on someone to get your information, because you have one full-time secretary. That's all you have, I think. Unless you're a committee chair or something like that. So you don't have a lot of people helping you figure out, is this a good thing to do or not to do? So if you could, and so what I'm getting to is, many times your constituents, they might be not only a trusted person, but a trusted person with information and with data. And so how do you go about trusting someone in regards to listening and taking up the calls or whatever they're proposing?
Okay, great. So it depends on who's bringing me the bill. If it's a lobbyist, I'm kind of okay. There's always one side, the other side, then there's the truth, right? So I need to figure out what. But then usually I'll take that to legal and say, this is what they're trying to get out. It's just what it accomplishes. But the most effective bills is one that comes from a constituent. So a constituent, or even an organization. Listen, a constituent they're the most effective lobbyist in the room. And I'll give you an example. There's a rule in my office. Even if the room is full and there's appointments, and whether it's lobbyist organizations, and a constituent drops by my office, my assistant knows to bring them straight back past everybody else just to say hello. My office is where they put if they're visiting the legislature, they put their coat, their rain boots. This is their office. I'm renting it. I'm just the trustee for a little while for the public trust. So it's theirs, and I'm there for welcoming. I wanted to address really quick assistants. My assistant, they're the gatekeeper. Be nice to them. When you go visit your legislator, be kind to them. They can stop you. I'll never know you came by, but they would never do that. But my point being, because when you go to follow up, and they'll remember you, and you'll start a little conversation, and it just really helps the flow of the meeting and the interaction with the legislator. But when you do go, and maybe you're lobbying for an effort or an issue, have a one-pager with you. Just don't bring a video, or don't bring a book, or don't bring, multicolored. Bring something, one-pager, because I'm having appointments every 15 minutes. And like Tony said, it's on different topics. You never know what. So, but give me the one pager, it's the bullet points. And then when you get there, you be brief and to the point, because don't get caught up to where you go in and say, hey, my Aunt Judy knows you, and you all used to go here. And the next thing you know, you're down a rabbit hole about some story, and 10 minutes is gone. Which is nice and pleasant, but you're not talking about your topic. That's a trap that falls in, and sometimes if I don't want to talk about the topic, I'll go into the stories. So it's not with constituents, mostly with lobbyists. But anyway.
Great thoughts. I appreciate that.
Right. So just watch for that. But if you can, but one point is if you can bring a story, when a story does count, if you can make it whatever your topic is, and you can say, so-and-so in our district is dealing with this issue, and you can show them a picture, or they live here, and of course they know where they are, that it's their dish. That brings it into, okay, someone in my area is suffering with this issue. We can fix this with legislation, and that's very effective. So just remember that you all are the most effective lobbyists that there are. And like I said, after the meeting's over, follow up 1 week later, follow up. Where are we at? How can we track the bill? Where is it at? And it really is a very efficient and effective way of getting your legislator to move on an issue. Now, politics comes into play if you're going to show up and your issue is taxes or abortion or Medicaid expansion or just a hot topic button issues. But because, those are preconceived notions and stuff that's already built up in their mind, and politics get involved, and that's leadership. But just know that you can make a difference. And like I said, especially if you're influential in your community, you can make a big difference, and you can have other people call. Phone calls are good too. Because emails I'll get 100 of those a day. Again, that's why I should put the district number in there. But phone calls, if you ring off the hook and my assistant comes in, says, we got 13 phone calls today on this issue. Okay, all right, what's the issue? Bring it up. Let's talk about it. Was it positive? Was it negative? That kind of thing.
Okay, I'd like everybody to take themselves off mute. And if you have any questions you'd like to ask Darren directly, let's do that. It looks like that we have 5 minutes left in our breakout group. So take yourself off mute and you can ask a direct question. Richard, you're off your mute.
I should be on mute. I mean, actually, I have a question.
Okay.
I was formulating. What if your own legislator is not likely to be sympathetic with what you want to talk about? Is it better to, is it ever make sense to talk to another legislator? Or what is your suggestion about that issue?
Yeah, that's a tough one. If especially if, I guess, philosophically you're in the minority in your district, if and that happens a lot. There's I'm a Democrat. There's only 6 of us in the legislature, and they're from urban or mostly urban areas. You have 1 or 2 in the rural areas, but if you have a legislator who's very, I'm just going to use an example. It's not, but it's very conservative, and you're very progressive minded, and you're trying to get across your topic or your issue. All you can do, really, because they got elected on a majority that believes the other way, and so it's going to be tough to move them. What you could do is find, though, they're good, because believe it or not every progressive or conservative thinks the same way all the time. And whatever your issue is, it has to happen to a progressive or a conservative. And you can get some of those members who know people who's affected by their families or personally to speak on your behalf, or take them with you, or whoever your legislator is. Maybe it was their teacher, maybe it was their Sunday school teacher, whatever relationship they have that can break the barrier. And sometimes you just have to chip away at it. And that's a tough one. It's not like paving your road, or, I struggle with this issue. I struggle the most with is medical marijuana. And I'll have some of my conservative friends, we'll be in the elevator and they understand, they're for it, but when they get off, they're not, because they're afraid they're going to get primaried. someone saying, oh, we want marijuana, everybody have that. Next thing we know, everybody's going to be doing, hard drugs because of some gateway drug. But kind of like wine in grocery stores, it took 7 years. And this, I think, eventually is going to come around because 38 states have medical marijuana. It's something that you're going to have to chip away at and garner support where you can. But are you going to change their mind? Probably not. But all you can do is put it in front of them, put it on their radar, and let people know that in their district there are people. And you can do even organization, whatever your topic is, whether it's a booth at a fair, set up a table in front of Kroger, whatever, to where you're being seen in your district. And you believe it or not, you can register people to vote that believe some of your same cause, because remember, half of them aren't registered. And
Okay.
that's I'm sorry.
Yeah, let's go. I think Louise McCowan has a question. Louise, do you have a question?
And that is the same one that Rich has.
There, okay.
Because I'm at more
Okay.
bedtime.
Okay. Well, then let me leave you with this here. When today, I'm going to sit down and write a thank you letter to Darren Jernigan. And it's good, and I think that's important for us, everybody to do. As soon as your visit's over with, write a thank you letter. I want to thank you all for joining us, and I think they're going to move us back. We need to break out and go back to the main room. Thank you.